Hey everyone, it's Jacqueline for Pixie Dust PhD. A question I am often asked is, where would you buy Saratoga Springs or Old Key West, or even just where would you stay between the two resorts? For Disney Vacation Club resorts located at Walt Disney World, Saratoga Springs and Old Key West do share quite a few similarities, so I can understand wanting the comparison. In this video, we'll do a head-to-head matchup of the resorts. There will mostly be a slant of looking at buying, so would you rather your home resort be Old Key West or Saratoga Springs, but this information should also be helpful if you're just trying to decide where to stay between the two. If you find this information helpful, please remember to like the video and consider subscribing to the channel. You can ring the bell icon once you're subscribed to receive notifications whenever I upload new videos. I really appreciate that you're here, and let's get into it. A significant portion of your enjoyment of a resort, whether you're owning your home resort contract there or just there for a stay, is going to be super personal, qualitative, subjective measures. I'm mostly going to skip those for this video because it's hard to compare those subjective measures head to head when, say, I, for example, may like theming at one resort better than the other, but you may have the exact opposite opinion. If you do want a full rundown of information for both Saratoga Springs and Old Key West, check out the Fast Facts videos I made about these resorts. You'll have all the quantitative data I thought was pertinent, plus you'll get all that qualitative information as well. In terms of resort style, these are both standalone Disney Vacation Club resorts. They are not attached to otherwise existing deluxe resorts. Saratoga Springs is themed to upstate New York, whereas Old Key West is of course themed to the Florida Keys. Old Key West is the original Disney Vacation Club resort, having opened way back in 1991. Saratoga Springs came significantly later, opening in 2004. And while the opening years are pretty far apart, all Disney Vacation Club resorts do receive periodic refurbishments. DVC refurbishments fall into two types. There's a full or hard goods refurbishment where you're really redoing everything, and then there's soft goods or a light refresh. Both of these resorts' last refurbishment was that full refurbishment. Saratoga Springs finished up in 2021. This was pretty delayed by the pandemic, which is why it took so many years. And Old Key West's refurbishment finished up in 2018. Typically, refurbishments are scheduled for about every 7 years or so. Last we heard, Old Key West is scheduled for a 2024 soft goods refresh, and then Saratoga Springs soft goods refresh will come in 2026. This is, of course, though, subject to change. If you're looking at buying Disney Vacation Club, the expiration year of your contract may matter to you. If you want to learn more about DVC expirations and also hear some speculation about what will happen as we approach and hit those expiration years, check out this prior video I made. I'll leave a link to it down in the description as well. Current Saratoga Springs contracts are set to expire in 2054. Original Old Key West contracts are set to expire in 2042. However, owners have been offered a renewal so they could extend their contracts to 2057. And if you were going to buy a new Old Key West contract directly from Disney now, it would have that 2057 expiration. If you are looking at Old Key West on the resale market, be sure to pay attention to the expiration year of that contract. It might be 2042, it might be 2057, and that can make a big difference for you. In terms of location in the Walt Disney World Resort area, Saratoga Springs and Old Key West are pretty much literally right next to each other. They're also near Disney Springs, though Saratoga Springs is definitely closer to Disney Springs than Old Key West. You can still walk to Disney Springs from Old Key West, but it will take you longer than Saratoga Springs. And given this proximity to Disney Springs, that means you cannot walk to any of the theme parks. For transportation to the theme parks from Old Key West and Saratoga Springs, you will be taking a bus. Unless, of course, you have your own car or your rental car with you. Buses are the only option. That being said, the buses are generally at least not shared with other resorts. So you'll get on the bus at your resort, and then there will be some internal stops at your resort, and then off to the theme parks. For Disney Springs, like I mentioned earlier, from both resorts you can walk, though it will be much quicker from Saratoga Springs, but you can also take a bus or a really lovely boat from either. If you do bring your own car or a rental car, parking is also quite similar between both resorts. Rather than one central lot, there's just a bunch of spaces spread out along the buildings. For the most part, you're going to be able to park fairly close to your room, and there's usually ample parking. It's not a big fight to find a space. Looking at home resort contract ownership specifically, let's talk for a bit about cost. We'll break this down into three main categories. That will be your initial purchase price, the annual dues, as well as how many points you need to stay. As I'm filming this in late summer 2022, if you want to buy a contract directly through Disney, both resorts are priced at $200 per point. This is of course subject to change, so please do check the official Disney Vacation Club website for the most up-to-date prices. And again, right now, in summer of 2022, the resale market prices are about $125 per point or so for Saratoga Springs, and then between $120 and $130 per point for Old Key West, just depending on your expiration year. Also note that contracts with a larger amount of points tend to have a smaller cost per point, but of course, you're going to end up paying a ton of money overall if it's like 300 points. And similarly, smaller point contracts, so 50 points, 100 points, something like that, tend to be on the higher end of cost per point. But the overall sum of money you'd be spending would be less since it's a smaller number of points overall. At this time on the resale market in summer 2022, you can expect the range of price per point for both of these resorts to be around $100 to $140 per point. This varies a bit based on size of the contract, as well as if the contract is stripped or loaded, things like that. And remember, resale prices do also change over time, so be sure to do your own browsing. These numbers won't stay true forever. Moving on to annual dues. In 2022, annual dues for Saratoga Springs was about $7.33 per point. Over at Old Key West, it's around $8.81 per point. I have rounded to the nearest cent here just for ease of understanding, but annual dues are assessed out to the 4th decimal place. Let's briefly look at the annual dues compound annual growth rate, or CAGR. I went over the concept of compound annual growth rate in much more detail in a prior video. Go ahead and check that out. I'll leave the link in the description below if you want to learn more about this math. But essentially, for a compound annual growth rate, you are looking at the current or final value, the beginning value, so for us that is dues when it opened, and then current dues, and then you're assessing that over time to see basically on average per year how much is this growing. As a quick example, with Old Key West, you'd use the 1991 dues as your beginning value, the 2022 dues as your final value, and then the amount of years between 1991 and 2022 as your time component. This results in an annual dues compound annual growth rate at Saratoga Springs of just over 3.5%. And for Old Key West, we're sitting just around 4%, meaning over the lifetime of the contract, annual dues are growing at about a 3.5% rate at Saratoga Springs or about a 4% rate at Old Key West. And finally, for cost, let's look at how many points realistically you would need to stay. For this, we'll be using the 2023 points charts. Again, points charts are subject to change, so for past the year 2023 when you're watching this, please do refer to the current points charts on the Disney Vacation Club website. And a brief side note, both resorts do have standard rooms and preferred rooms, but Saratoga Springs standard rooms and preferred rooms have a different points charts, whereas at Old Key West, it's a standard room or a room near the hospitality house, but those are on the same points charts. Those rooms near the hospitality house at Old Key West do not cost any more points per night than their standard counterparts. And for those of you unfamiliar with point charts, there's two main things you want to pay attention to. First, Sunday through Thursday nights cost less points than Friday and Saturday nights, so I've broken those out in this table. Second, there are different DVC seasons or travel periods. Travel periods are based on Disney Vacation Club's assessment of demand, so if you're traveling during a low demand season, your room is going to cost less points than if you had that same room in a high demand season. Currently, there are 7 travel periods. The lowest right now is the month of September, and then the most expensive travel period covers the most in-demand time, so the time between Christmas and New Year's, and also like peak spring break. And the different point cost per night due to the travel periods is why in the table you will see a range of values. For example, if you're staying in a studio at Saratoga Springs on a weeknight, so a Sunday through Thursday, that will cost you 9 points in the low season and up to 21 points in the high season per night. Over at Old Key West, that's 9 points to 22 points. That's for a standard room. And then again, Friday and Saturday nights cost a little bit more than their weeknight counterparts, and preferred rooms cost more than the standard rooms. But comparing Saratoga Springs to Old Key West for studios, the points cost is pretty similar. That also holds true for the 1-bedrooms, where you can expect to spend about 20 to 50 points per night, just depending on what time of year you're traveling. The number of points you'll need to stay in a 2-bedroom is also very similar between these two resorts, somewhere in the like 40 to 70-ish point range. For those 3-bedroom grand villas though, this is where you start to see a pretty big difference. The low end for a Saratoga Springs 3-bedroom is 63 points per night, whereas over at Old Key West, it's only 46 points per night. 46 points per night for 3 bedrooms is extremely cheap. Looking at other columns in this chart, you can spend 46 per night in a 2-bedroom or even a 1-bedroom pretty easily. But overall, the cost to stay for studios, 1-bedrooms, and 2-bedrooms is pretty similar between the two resorts, and then for those 3-bedroom grand villas, you're going to be saving a lot of points at Old Key West compared to Saratoga Springs. Saratoga Springs does also have a specialty type of room that Old Key West does not. These are those treehouse villas. There's no different view category for the treehouse villas. Everyone is the same standard view, and you're going to be spending between about 38 and 76 points per night. Next, let's look at the total inventory of the resorts. Neither Old Key West nor Saratoga Springs have dedicated studios or dedicated 1-bedrooms. All of the studio and 1-bedroom inventory comes from lockoffs. Saratoga Springs has far more rooms available for lockoffs at 432 versus Old Key West is only 230. Moving into 2-bedrooms now, both resorts do have dedicated 2-bedrooms. Again, Saratoga Springs has more inventory here than Old Key West. In all of the grand villas at both resorts are dedicated. Here again, Saratoga Springs has slightly more rooms than Old Key West. Plus at Saratoga Springs, you have those treehouse villas. Overall, inventory at Saratoga Springs is larger than that at Old Key West, but they have the same general ethos of inventory where it's mostly lockoffs and dedicated 2-bedrooms. Let's take a closer look at those rooms in terms of size and occupancy. Studios at both resorts sleep 4, but fairly uniquely for Disney Vacation Club resorts at Walt Disney World, Old Key West has 2 actual queen beds. Your second bed is not a pull-out couch or a pull-down Murphy-style bed. There are just 2 proper beds, which can be great if you're traveling with 4 adults, for example. 1-bedrooms at both resorts sleep 5 guests, and here you're back to 1 proper bed, and then the rest of the beds are a mix of pull-out couches, pull-down Murphy-style, etc. Old Key West 1-bedroom, though, offers a lot more space than Saratoga Springs, nearly 300 square feet more. Moving into 2 bedrooms, these both do sleep up to 9 folks, and again, the Old Key West offering is about 300 square feet larger than that at Saratoga Springs. At Saratoga Springs, depending on if you book a lock-off 2-bedroom or a dedicated 2-bedroom, the sleeping situation is going to be different in terms of the layout of beds. Versus at Old Key West, the type and number of beds is going to be the same whether or not you book a dedicated or lock-off 2-bedroom. In either case, dedicated or lock-off at both resorts, the maximum number of actual beds you'll get is 3. The rest are going to be pull-downs, pull-outs, things like that. Next, moving on to those 3-bedroom grand villas, at both resorts you will sleep up to 12 guests. And again, here Old Key West is a little bit larger. And if you are interested in those treehouse villas at Saratoga Springs, they do sleep up to 9 in a little under 1,100 square feet. Overall, occupancy in the various room sizes at both resorts is the same, but largely the Old Key West rooms are going to feel much more spacious than those at Saratoga Springs. We'll very briefly touch on some subjective matters just so you have this information at hand. For pools, Saratoga Springs does have 2 feature pools, which is pretty cool compared to Old Key West, and most other resorts really only have 1. And both have a good amount of leisure pools too. Most of the Disney Vacation Club resorts located at Walt Disney World have fairly similar recreation options. You've typically got a jogging trail, gyms, maybe something like volleyball or basketball or tennis courts, some sort of outside sport, campfires, things like that. A little bit special to these resorts specifically is that Saratoga Springs is great if you love golf. And Old Key West offers those Surrey bikes for rentals, which I think are just super cute and fun. You can see how these recreation offerings do fit into the overall themes and enhance them a little bit with golf for upstate New York and Surrey bikes for Key West, Florida. In terms of major quirks, I wouldn't say Saratoga Springs has any obvious ones. I do think overall the rooms are actually on the smaller size. I made a whole video about Disney Vacation Club room sizes comparing all of the resorts, not just these 2, if you want to check that out for more, but overall basically Saratoga Springs doesn't rank very highly. It's certainly not a problem, but just something to note. For Old Key West, the main quirk I definitely want to point out is that most of the buildings are 3 stories, but actually most of them don't have elevators. If you're staying in a 2nd or 3rd floor room in a vast majority of the buildings, you will be going up and down the stairs all the time. If you do have mobility concerns, request a room on the 1st floor and/or in a building with an elevator. Definitely speak to a cast member about that. Now that we've got all that information, let's do the head-to-head matchup. For opening year, Saratoga Springs is much newer if that matters to you. Expiration year is a little bit of a toss-up. It really depends on which expiration year you would get over at Old Key West, 2042 or 2057. Saratoga Springs is in the middle of that at 2054. Your main mode of transportation at theme parks is going to be bus, and in fact, that's really your only option if you don't bring a car or choose to use ride shares. And if you do bring a car, parking at both resorts is super similar. You'll be able to park very close to your room. If you're looking to buy a contract, the purchase price directly through Disney or over on the resale market, again, are pretty similar between the 2 resorts. There's not a clear winner here. Annual dues, however, are dramatically different. Right now, Saratoga Springs is about $1.50 less per point than Old Key West, which doesn't sound like much. I know $1.50 isn't a ton, but if you're looking at buying a lot of points, it can definitely add up. And the Saratoga Springs compound annual growth rate is also less than that over at Old Key West. So your annual dues at Saratoga Springs are literally less than Old Key West, and also it seems like they're growing a little bit slower than at Old Key West. This is really important because if you plan on keeping your contract for a long time, it's highly likely you will end up paying more in annual dues over time than you will for that initial purchase price. The points you need to stay at both of these resorts is low to average. They're pretty good deals overall. I will say though that the Old Key West 3-bedrooms are extremely cheap when you're looking at grand villas. If you have any plans to use a 3-bedroom ever, Old Key West would definitely be the preference here. For inventory, Saratoga Springs has far more rooms than Old Key West. Generally speaking, availability at both of these resorts is pretty good though because they have larger inventory overall. Just a general note though that larger inventory tends to mean there's less competition for the rooms because there's more rooms to pick from. So even though they both have fairly large inventory overall, because Saratoga Springs has even more rooms than Old Key West, your stress of booking at Saratoga Springs should be lower than Old Key West. The footprint of the villa rooms at Saratoga Springs is small to average, whereas at Old Key West, it's incredibly large, so if you like to sprawl out, that may be the resort for you. But the maximum occupancy between the 2 resorts is the same, so studios will be up to 4, 1-bedrooms is up to 5, 2-bedrooms is up to 9, and grand villas is up to 12. Throwing in a few subjective matters at the end here, so this is now just my opinion. For pools, I personally would prefer the Saratoga Springs pool setup over Old Key West. I think having 2 featured pools is really cool. When I travel to Disney World, I tend to focus on the theme park, so recreation really isn't a huge deal to me, but the dining at the resort is. And I will say Olivia's at Old Key West is a true gem. And for me personally, since you can't walk to any theme parks from either resort, I suppose distance to Disney Springs is the deciding factor, so I'd probably rather be at Saratoga Springs. For my personal travels for a studio, I'd probably rather stay in Saratoga Springs just because I usually only travel with my partner and don't need that second extra full bed at Old Key West. But for a 1-bedroom villa, I'd probably way rather be in Old Key West because it's much more spacious. The access to Disney Springs actually isn't that important to me, so I don't think it holds a lot of weight in terms of a winning factor for Saratoga Springs. But with those lower annual dues and the smaller compound annual growth rate for annual dues, Saratoga Springs is pretty compelling when you're looking at ownership. I think this just comes down to personal taste though. I personally just prefer the theming at Old Key West. I also like that the rooms in general are bigger, and that those 3-bedroom Grand Villas points cost is fairly cheap in case I ever do want to host a bunch of friends or family. Ultimately, it's up to you. I hope this has been helpful. My equipment is also telling me that my audio file for my external mic died, so thank you for your patience while the audio on this was a little bit subpar. I hope the rest of your day is magical, and we'll see you real soon at Pixie Dust PhD.